FIU Athletics Paw'dcast, post Maine recap, North Texas preview. Week 3 coming up, third week of the season, I should say, for the FIU Panthers. Tough one to La Tech, close one against Maine, and onward we go. EJ Ricketts and Patrick Murray. Patrick was with us on the ESPN Plus broadcast this past weekend for Maine, and really interesting game. I think I think a lot of fans may be inclined to just take a look at the score line and have their thoughts based on the 2-point win. But, we're coming at this from an FIU perspective as well. But, the first thing I think of after this win, Patrick, is really Kewan Jenkins' performance. Certainly Chris Mitchell as well. Anytime you tie a school record with Tyrese and T.Y. Hilton, that's a very positive thing. It's a good company. But for Kewan and his first start, to nearly throw for 300 yards. I don't really care who the opponent is, whether it's a Power 5 program or an FCS. I think whatever the competition is, to go for nearly 300 and in your first collegiate start, that's something you can take a lot from, and we'll get more into how rare that's been through the last few years, or how significant. What stood out to you in Kewan's first start?
I think you've got to be excited about Kewan Jenkins if you're an FIU fan. I mean, he showed that he can be a playmaker. I think the thing that stood out the most was his ability to extend plays, keep them going, and whether with its legs, we saw he had a touchdown run called back by a hold that was a down the field hold.
Right.
On a wide receiver, and also just extending the play with his legs and then keeping his eyes down the field and being able to make a throw like he did on the first touchdown pass to Chris Mitchell. That playmaking ability is something that FIU has lacked, and now you got to be excited to have something like that at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you saw the improvement in the passing game. It was not another 4-yard game. I think the rushing totals were slanted a little bit by just the end of the game there, taking some time off the clock. I think Shamari was around 30 yards. I think we take a look at the final stats for the team, 13 total rushing yards. It's a little bit distorted by what happened in there. I certainly think the ground game showed what it could do against Louisiana Tech. But you talk about Kewan's performance, and we were referencing this a little bit last night. It was just going back through the last few years, right? You see 292 on the stat sheet for passing yards for Kewan, and I don't think that's something to take for granted. I mean, last year it was done 3 total times. Grayson did it twice. Hayden did it once. Max Bordenschlager in his record-setting campaign, right? 2021. Just 3 times where he passed for 292 plus. It wasn't done at any point in 2020. And James Morgan has been kind of alluded to as the standard, right, for FIU quarterbacks, him and Alex Magoo, 2 of the most successful stints in FIU history. And James in the 2019 season, where we beat Miami and got to a bowl game, I mean, James threw for 292 plus 1 time. And then in the regular season, twice if you include the bowl game against Arkansas State. And then 2018, which was best season in FIU history, just twice, 292 plus. This isn't really a common thing, and the fewest amounts of points that we've scored in any of those 9 occasions it's happened the last 5 years was 24. So I think scoring 14 with this passing performance was somewhat of an aberration as well. We let a couple trips in the red zone and plus territory not wind up in points. But I just keep saying, I don't think this is a performance to take for granted. It's been rare the last 5 years, 9 of the last 50 plus games. So it's about less than 20% of games you see this happen. And it's his first start. There's all sorts of potential and promise coming off this game for me, despite the nuance of some tense moments there down the stretch.
There were certainly more opportunities to score, and even on the first drive of the game, there were 2 plays when I went back and looked at the film. Right. 2 plays that were very close to being long touchdowns. There was a Shamari Lawrence run where the O-line had it blocked up pretty well. There was a hole there, and it wasn't a big hole, but Shamari tried to squeeze through the hole. and he just barely got grabbed by a Maine defender. And if he had been able to hit that hole maybe like a split second earlier, he's probably gone for like a 70-something yard touchdown run. And then that same drive, Jalen Bracey is open on a slant, and Kiwan just misses him. And, it was early in the game, kind of amped up, freshman jitters maybe a little bit, and he missed him high. If he puts that on his numbers, there's no safety in the middle of the field. Bracey probably takes that 70 yards for a touchdown. And then, there's a couple other plays down in the red zone where various things, you had the bad snap on fourth down where the center thought that Maine had jumped offside, but they hadn't. And that's why he snapped it early. You had the play where the interception where Keywan and I think it was Patterson just weren't on the same page on what route was supposed to be run. So
Right.
that, certainly was some opportunity there for some more points that just an aberration maybe that likely you do end up scoring more points in that game. And there's going to be more opportunities for him to throw for 290 plus. I mean, it's interesting how rare that is. He may do it again next week again with North, because you're going to have some games this year where you're in shootouts and you're going to have to throw it even more than you did and go even more up tempo than you did against Maine. And he's going to have some opportunities to throw for 300 plus, and another one maybe coming up against North Texas.
Yeah, North Texas gave up some points against Cal. It was kind of I was surprised in a lot of aspects of that North Texas Cal game. We'll get into that. Cal was feeling the momentum of that ACC bid. They were fired up and they played pretty well. Defensively, for us, I thought it was another standout performance. Like the defense really kept us in the game at La Tech on the road, especially with how long they were out there on the field. I'm looking at the drive chart right now for Maine, and there were only 4 possessions for Maine in the entire second half. The first one was that impressive 12-play, 81-yard drive, but after that, just turnover on downs, a punt, and then that final drive, turnover on downs. So, even though we weren't scoring, certainly taking some time and sustaining some drives to not give Maine a ton of opportunities. Obviously, Donovan Manuel did what he does again, just racking up tackles, had the forced fumble. I think it's impressive now. That's 3 takeaways in 2 games, right? You have the interception from Deverick, the forced fumble at La Tech. I think Jamal Potts had that, 2 of them, and then the forced fumble that we were able to pick up here on Saturday. So they're taking the ball away. Brian Blades filling in for Adrian Cole, I thought had a couple of impressive pass breakups, defending Montego Moss, the Maine's #1 option. And really Brian's first extended time defensively being counted upon in that role. And I thought he played really well. The defense continues to encourage in my mind, and obviously got to the quarterback a couple times in the second half when it really was necessary, especially to kind of take him out of the verge of field goal range at the end there.
Yeah, the defense did what it needed to do. I mean, they gave up some drives where Maine was able to move the ball, but once they got down near the 30-yard line, they kind of put up a fence there and said, this is it, and got those pressures late in the game when they really needed it to push Maine back out of the red zone area. And yeah, defense. I think the defense is going to be good enough to keep FIU in games, and then the offense is going to get there. And Donovan Manuel was fantastic. I thought Jovan DeWitt had some really nice pressures dialed up with him as well. Like not even blitzes, but like simulated pressures where you're only rushing 4, but then he had them designed where he gets Donovan Manuel matched up on a guard in space. And you take that matchup anytime with Manuel's quickness and agility to get around those guards. And I think he's going to be a weapon to use in those situations when you need to get after the passer. And yeah, some encouraging things from the secondary. Deverick Daniel, I thought, had another really good game. And I think this FIU defense is going to be good enough to keep things close just about every week.
I don't want to miss talking about Chris Mitchell's day as well. I mean, like tying a school record, 201 yards. I wish I realized that at the end of the broadcast. We're having some, I think, just technical difficulties with the score, the stat website that we rely on. I think it said he finished at 186, but it was really 201. So that, I mean, I tied him with Tyrese Chambers, who I think did that against Charlotte, right, the other year, and then of course T.Y. Hilton's 201-yard game. That's awesome company and a lot of big chunk plays. it wasn't just all busted coverage. That first touchdown in front of the student section, which was awesome, by the way. Great place got loud. I mean, it almost was felt like a 50-50 ball, but it was perfectly placed. But it wasn't as if he had a bunch of space to work with.
It
He
was
had to be
pass
a bit
interference on
physical.
the
Yeah,
defense.
yeah,
Like,
it was PI. Hey, yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Like
good play.
he went up and got it and made the play. Man, I think he showed he's had those games, right? It hasn't been the constant, maybe the prolificness that Tyrese has recently shown, but Chris Mitchell has had those games before, and this was the career game for him. It doesn't have to be 201 every time, but I think he showed he can be a high caliber playmaker that links up with Kiwan really well.
I think so, and I think what David Yost is trying to do offensively, where they're running some deep choice concepts, where that's going to play to Mitchell's strengths, where he's going to be able to read what the defender's trying to do with him, and kind of what they say is, if we're even, I'm leaving. So if he's even with the defender, he's going to go deep, and if the defender's over the top, he's going to cut it short, and that's going to give him an opportunity to make some plays in space, whether it's going deep on the deep balls or catching a hitch route, a comeback with a little bit of space to try and make somebody miss. And I think those kind of things really play to his strengths. And it's interesting with Kiwan as well and his command of the offense, being able to go in and change things the way he wants. Like Coach Mack was even saying after the game that the one touchdown at the end of the first half to Mitchell, that was Kiwan changing the
Right.
play and saying, hey, let's try a hitch and go here, changing the play at the line of scrimmage. And he guessed right there. I mean, that ended up being a good call. And the corner was kind of sitting in, expecting, reading his eyes, expecting him to throw one of those hitch routes, and then Mitchell just beats him deep. So I think that they've got some good chemistry going there early on, and that's going to be a fun connection to see how they develop.
Those are the moments in this game, right? That stand out to me more so than the score. The fact that you've got a quarterback there is a true freshman. This is what he's done, though. This is what he did at Miami Central. He had the
Ran the
ability,
offensive meetings at Miami
right?
Central. Like he was
Yeah.
instead of the offensive coordinator, he was running the meeting.
he watches film, but like he doesn't like to watch NFL games or other college football. He wants to watch film. Like he's a student of the
Yeah.
game, and you don't have any true freshmen that the coaches are like, yeah, he can make checks to the line. We trust that. We know maybe sometimes there'll be a mistake there, but he just sensed that the defense thought another screen pass was coming, and to have the wherewithal to make that check like that, those kind of things are what's exciting to me. That gave me encouragement from this game. I think 14 points was an aberration. He cleaned some things up, and it's a 21-28 point game at the minimum. To finish on Chris Mitchell. I mean, yeah, he had 348 receiving yards last year, so he goes 201 on Saturday. I think his season high last year was 84 yards at Charlotte. So more than doubling what his season best was last year, and he looked like a really improved player. So that was fun. Look, I thought it was a great environment, great day. The student turnout was great. Like that touchdown from Mitchell right in front of him, like that was awesome. That's what we need more out of. We need to keep packing the cage. And North Texas comes in this Saturday. Who, it's one of those, feels like a status check game, right? Like we're gonna have two of them this year against teams that we took it on the chin last year against. Western Kentucky will come in here at the end of the season. I'm just really excited to see what we're able to do in that game, especially with more time to get the system going here. But North Texas, that was a tough game on the road last year. And you look at the numbers of that game, and I got five. They jumped on us in the first half, 24-0 after a quarter, 5 touchdown passes in the first half from Austin Ani, 52-14 the final score. So real chance to gauge, can we make progress from that? How different a team are we? They're certainly, they have some changes under center. Their running back rotation looks fairly similar, right? We look at what they did against Cal, 58-21 loss. They were hanging with Cal for the first half. The Bears have a big playmaker of their own that really might change the direction of their program.
Yeah, Jay Nod at running back
Yeah,
looked
Jay
really good.
Knott,
Cal.
188 rushing yards. Yeah.
North
And
Texas had a real hard time tackling Cal's running backs. They couldn't stop the run at all, and they couldn't run the
right.
ball themselves either.
If you look at playmakers on their team, Jamari Macklin comes to mind, maybe their version of Smoke Harris, if you will. We had some issues with Smoke Harris in the second half at La Tech. He certainly looks on paper to be the guy to put a spotlight on. He's second in the country last year in yards per reception. Even in the loss, he had 4 catches for 122 yards. So he averaged 30.5 yards per catch. They had 2 touchdowns and a long of 59. Stone Earl, their quarterback, was 12 for 19, 174 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Look, this is a North Texas program that's used to winning recently. They have a new head coach in there. I think a lot of folks in Denton were really disappointed with that game against Cal. I know Cal's the quote unquote Power 5 program, but those are the kind of games that North Texas has won before. They were the one of the class teams of Conference USA, now obviously in the American, but we still signed that game contract with them. This is going to be a real interesting team. It's not the same team we played in November. Still a lot of talent like Macklin and a number of their running backs, but it just kind of feels like a different vibe heading into this year playing them rather than last November.
North Texas is definitely different. Their new head coach, Eric Morris, he's an air raid guy, so it could be one of those games where it's a shootout and both teams are throwing it 50 plus times, but yeah, that team's definitely different. No more Austinani. All the running backs are back. They were really good last year, but they did not run the ball. I think they averaged less than 2 yards per carry against Cal last week. I don't think running the ball is going to be a focus for them. And they do have some of the playmakers. They lost a couple of their tight ends. They lost some leaders on defense. So yeah, it definitely feels like a different North Texas team, and hard to kind of get a read on what kind of game this is going to be, but certainly could be a measuring stick type of game for FIU to see where they're
at. Taking a look at some scores around Conference USA before we finish things up. First of all, that Duke Clemson game last night was wild. I thought it was cool how they got on the field before the end of the game. Like they didn't get on the sideline. They were like right next to the sideline. I feel I'd never see that on rushings of the field, like just already being on the grass. Shout out to Duke for a well done storming of the field, and Clemson's obviously got some things to figure out offensively.
Riley Leonard was ridiculous for Duke, and Garrett Riley coming in, and you feel like he's going to fix Clemson's offense at offensive coordinator, and they seem to have gotten worse.
Like that's one of those things too. Like it's hard. It's so hard to tell when a team gets in the red zone often, and in this case inside the 5, and just leaves points on the table as much as Clemson. Like if they punch it in all those situations, is anybody saying Clemson has an offensive problem? Like it's Dabo said after the game, I've never been a part of a college football game like that. So who knows if Clemson will be fine, but red zone efficiently.
You can't draw too many conclusions off the first game. I think, last year LSU lost that game to Florida State, the first game, by 1 point, and people were saying they might be the worst team in the SEC West, and then they went and won the SEC West. So
right. So
you never know.
Who knows at that point? But certainly was an entertaining weekend. Looking around Conference USA here, Liberty was in a tight one with Bowling Green, able to win by 10. SMU with 38-14 over La Tech. I think Western Kentucky's win was probably one of the more impressive ones. Austin Reed just seems to be picking up where he left off. I think 330 passing yards. Sam Houston's defense was not bad on the road at BYU. It was a 14-0 loss. Anything stand out to you over Conference USA play on Saturday?
Western Kentucky looks like they're going to be the favorite. I think everybody thought that coming in, and they certainly look every bit as good this year as they were last year. And Jacksonville State, I feel like, has been kind of surprising. They blew out ETSU, and you say, well, okay, it's an FCS team, but Jacksonville State was an FCS team last year, and then they got that win at UTEP in week 0. So I think they've been better than expected. I think Western Kentucky is right up there at the top, and then I think there's a pack below that. It's going to be hard to tell who's going to step up and be the number 2 team there, if anybody can step up and knock off Western Kentucky.
Western, very talented team, very talented quarterback. But it's hopefully be a fun one here when we play them on senior nights. And again, a good gauge of progress from one year to the next. That starts here on on Saturday against North Texas. To me, uh, I don't know if you would expect a similar kind of performance numbers wise from Kiwan. It's a step up, obviously defensively from a Maine team to North Texas, but man, he showed a lot of ability, that evasiveness in the backfield. He certainly won a little bit more from the rushing game. Again, the numbers were thwarted a little bit in the end, but Kiwan was running backwards a bunch of yards to waste time off the clock. So it wasn't really
I think
13 rushing yards.
I think you got to give Maine credit too, especially on
Yeah,
defense. And I thought those guys were good and they played tough. Going back watching the film, Isaiah Henderson, 92 for them, like keeps standing out. Like he was
yeah,
tough and all over the place. And Maine did a lot of things where they were shifting the front around, like reducing the front, shifting gaps at the snap, and using some run stunts where you try to occupy one offensive lineman, you got another defensive lineman looping around you, and that's hard to deal with for
right.
an offensive line in game 2 of the season, trying to pass all that off. And so I think that caused some problems for FIU's run game, but they also had a couple plays where they were like right there to break in a big run. So I think they're going to break a couple of those at some point later in the season, like they did against La Tech with that big 67-yarder.
Yeah, I mean, look, North Texas's defense, it looked vulnerable. Their offense certainly kept them in the game for a half, but I think they only had less than 10 total yards in the second half. So they'll be trying to correct some things just as a whole, not even passing or rushing, just as a whole. Cal really thwarted them, and they ended up putting the Louisiana Monroe transfer at quarterback in. So they had 2 quarterbacks play. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide on Saturday. What do you feel is important here when what feels like it could be a very competitive game? Feels like it.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be competitive. I think Jenkins is going to have a chance to put up some big numbers again. And one thing to look out for is Eric Rivers. How healthy is he? Can you get him healthy? He didn't really have a big impact on the game last week, but there are a couple plays where he got open and they just couldn't connect. He got open deep. So if he's healthy enough, that's another deep threat that can really help you. And I think the key is going to be up front for FIU on both sides of the ball. Can you sustain blocks longer in the run game to open some holes? Can you protect Kiwan long enough? And then on the opposite side of the ball, can you get some pressure on North Texas's quarterback like FIU did at times late in the game against
Right.
Maine? So I think that'll be the key is up front.
Yeah, the pressure in the backfield wasn't necessarily sustained all game, but it made its presence felt in big moments too, right? Especially on that last drive. Jordan Gerard, Alex Nobles, some big plays defensively to harass Derek Robertson over the course of the game. So just excited to see if we can get the offense rolling and finish out some drives. I think again, 14 points to me was an aberration. We've only seen less than 20% of the time a quarterback over the last 5 years throw for 292 plus. And Kiwan comes in his first start and does that. So despite the score line, I really do think this is the FIU Athletics podcast. I'm not going to just roast our guys, right? But I really am not trying to be Homer and feeling that there are some positive things and some reasons to feel encouraged, even though it was a 2-point win. There's some really good things from Kiwan. Saturday, 6:30 Eastern kickoff. We'll have Jonathan Cyprian, former all conference guy here at FIU, an NFL veteran as well. He'll be in the broadcast booth with me. Corey Brooks and Natalie Wooden on the 11:40 a.m. Pregame show that'll start at 6. Patrick, you're off to USF this weekend, right? Got to call that game. Who's USF playing?
Yeah, they're playing Florida A&M. So I'll see the Rattlers, the Bulls. Alex Golesh is home game as the Bulls head coach. So it should be fun.
Yeah, have fun with that one. We tuned into that. And then FIU North Texas 6:30. So we'll see if we can make it back-to-back wins at the Cage before heading up to UConn. And it's not Stores, Hartford, right? East Hartford, where the stadium is at. I'll have to do my
I'm not sure.
I'll have to finish off the prep. But the focus is UNT first. Then we'll look at UConn stuff. But one game at a time. That's right. All right, another episode of the FIU Athletics Podcast. Patrick, appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, AJ.